Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 150 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome back to the show. In this episode, we're going to continue on our getting good working dope for our rifle. And in this one, we're going to talk about the Hornady D.O.P.E program, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So thanks for taking the time to join us. This ought to be a good one. If you want to shoot great, you've got to have great working dope for your rifle. So without further ado, here we go. All right, before we get started, I would like to say a quick thank you to Krieger Barrels. Krieger is the maker of fine cut rifle barrels made in the great state of Wisconsin. They have a new program called Krieger Direct where you can order your new barrel and have it in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So if you want the best and you need it now, stop over to KriegerDirect.com. That's KriegerDirect.com today. We'd also like to thank TriggerTech. TriggerTech is the maker of fine rifle triggers. We put them in all of our custom rifles here. We really recommend them to the customers, whether they're using one of our rifles or otherwise. They are safe, easy to adjust, and easy to install, made for lots of great makes and models. So if you're looking for an upgrade to your rifle, factory or custom, great place to start is putting a good quality trigger in it. And if you're going to do that, we recommend TriggerTech. You can learn more at TriggerTech.com. That's TriggerTech.com today. So we wouldn't be doing you a service or a good service if we weren't and didn't talk about the Hornady D.O.P.E program. Years ago when we were trying to get good working dope for the rifles, there were lots of new programs on the market. There was lots of good programs on the market. And a lot of them, if not all of them, had some issues. Some worse than others. You know, they were great starting points. And being in their infancy, a lot of them, they were better than nothing, right? So if you're looking to set up, and get your rifle getting ready to go out and enjoy and doing some shooting at long range, it was really hard to do if you didn't have anything, right? Just guessing. So they were certainly better off than that. But they also came with some other issues. For example, people believed if they entered in the correct information, they would get perfect working dope for the rifle. Like a math equation. We know that 4 plus 4 equals 8, right? But it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of stuff that works in the background on these different programs, and like we talked about before, there are fingerprints to your rifle. One of the best programs that we have found to date is the Hornady D.O.P.E program. Now, 2 years ago, it was okay. I mean, we wouldn't use it here at the school yet, although we would introduce it and talk about it. There wasn't the biggest library to them, and they still had some issues at distance. Like they were still working on it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't up to the level to where we would introduce it to the class. Last year, we started using it here at the shooting school. So we would teach them how to do it old school, which is we're going to talk about the danger of the D.O.P.E program. But I will tell you that as far as the ease of getting a new shooter into long-range shooting and the ease of trying to get at least good starting dope and some tools to fix it, D.O.P.E has done probably a better job than almost any other program out there, at least as far as I'm concerned, especially for the interface. The app is free to download. I think they charge you $1 if you want to print something off the app. But when we would use the app, the tools that they give you in the background, the interface in which new shooters can work with it, just incredible. I mean, really, last year, it wasn't uncommon for the rifles to be within 1 to 2 tenths at 700 yards off, and 1 to 3 tenths maybe at 1,000. And to let you know where that was at 5 or 7 years ago, it wasn't uncommon for rifles to be off 5 and 7 tenths. So they are getting really, really good. You might ask, well, why and how were the rifles off at distance? And just to give you a background of the story of how this works, when we would bring clients or students into the long-range shooting school here, we would make a ballistics chart from scratch. Even though we could easily map out all of the school rifles and issue a working dope card, right? I always thought it was in the best interest of the students to not do that because I wanted them to experience what it was going to be like when they went home and they did this for their own rifle. Because if we just issued them a dope card, they would assume that they just print it off and it's going to be right. And when they get home, they're going to find out that's anything but true. And they're going to have all kinds of issues. They're going to wonder what they're doing wrong. So what we do here at the shooting school is we get all the data, just like we talked about in previous podcasts. We chronograph in real weather conditions at that time, and then the next day we issue a click chart, or what we consider a starter chart. Not proofed, it's just a starter chart. And then we would run through the steel with the starter chart, having them take notes as we shoot to sort of see, okay, here's what the chart says, but here's what your rifle needs. And so they can see the difference, and they can actually look at it and say, oh my God, at 1,000 yards, it's 2 to 3 tenths off. And then the next rifle might be 2 tenths off. And one rifle might miraculously be dead on. It's just each rifle is a different fingerprint, and they can all produce these results at any given time. It's the individual rifle itself. And so we're able to teach them that here's how we make the chart, here's how we use the chart, here's what to expect when you run it for the first time, that at distance it is going to be off, and then here's some tools to fix it. What Hornady has done, and the reason I say the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Hornady has introduced such a great program, such an easy program to get into, and very accurate, with great tools in the background to fix the dope. They've also made it an Achilles heel, and the fact that you now depend on that app or that program, and you don't get working dope for your rifle. And more importantly, I don't think you'll learn how to make the wind call without it. And so always be careful with technology that you don't depend on it. And I'm not an anti-tech guy at all. I would say learn how to manually make calls, practice it regularly. Remember, it's your correction times speed times clock, just like we talked about in the other podcasts. And we're actually teaching wind right now in our online long-range shooting school. Do not depend on that, like that magic 8-ball in high school. You shook it and you asked it a question and it would answer, yes, no, maybe, whatever. Your app isn't that. You don't need to ask it for your dope. Dope is something that you should have for your rifle. It's just giving it to you what it is at that distance, right? It's doing the math. Don't depend on it, that's your only form of information or where you're going to get it at, and be dependent on it for your wind calls, because it is so good and so easy to use, and it does a lot of things in the background. Oh man, I can tell you stories of guys who've had back in the day, I think they were called Blackberries, where they would have their click charts on those. We're talking 15, 20 years ago. I watched one break in a match. 3-day sniper match. First day, it got broken. He had no dope for the rest of the match. I watched guys go on hunting trips with no dope for their rifles. I know another guy that said he had his Kestrel, whatever it was, stepped on by a horse, and his dope was in it. So he was out on a hunt. Horse stepped backwards, stepped on something, and it was his wind meter, whatever it was. His ballistics chart was in. So just having a backup copy, a backup plan, and a manual chart means you're not depending on it. So if you have this FORDOF program and you're using it for the wind and for your dope, that if it breaks, if your batteries die, if it won't turn on, like we experienced one time last year where it was asking for a password, it locked itself out, and you're going through entering password, and it's kicking you out. And this stuff happens with technology, especially with updates. And the last place you want to be is on the elk hunt of a lifetime. You turn it on to get your dope, and it's asking for an update. Bad place to be. So having a manual chart to be able to get your dope off of it at 700 yards, look at your wind value, do your math, and be able to depend on yourself and be able to do it without it is just as important as learning to use it for the great tool that it is. Now let's talk about the great part of the tool. It does a lot in the background with the wind that is super important, right? But it also allows you to dial in your dope and then correct it with what they call the axial form factor. So you can go in and let's just say your dope is off a tenth or 2/10 at 1,000 in a certain weather condition. You can go in real time, tell it through the axial form factor. It's a button that you push, right, in the edit mode that allows you to select what you actually needed, and it will save it for your rifle. It's correcting the dope. It's actually learning your rifle. Now, it still doesn't have a lot of leeway with it, and we have seen situations where when you use the parabolic curve, it doesn't still give you a ton of room, and you will get issues with barrels and rifles that are outside the normal range of the rifles that they fired to make the chart. So they don't use a BC in the FORDOF program. They use the arc or the track of the bullet fired through Doppler. And they fire many different rifles over and over and over again. And what they're doing is they're trying to take an average of what all these rifles are to give you a good starting point. And that's a good thing. But you might have that rifle that's way out of norm, either way high, way low, curvature of the bore, the barrel's bowed. I mean, there's just a million things it could be that you are not falling inside the normal range that the program's set up for. So I'll go back and say that, look, it's okay in those scenarios. Remember I said about bracketing the curve or the arc of the bullet up and down a little bit by adjusting your scope height. So if you fall outside that norm, don't be afraid to adjust your scope height up and down a little bit. Don't be afraid to mess with the speed if you have to try to get these things lined up better. Sometimes you just have to lie to the program. The other thing that they do, which I think is really useful, and it's really a big topic is to get into, is what they call the zero angle. Now, I am not a salesperson for Hornady. They're not advertisers here. We don't sell their products direct to customers here. I certainly don't make any money off the app. But what they did is they made this program called Zero Angle where you could go in and get your offset at 100 yards, and it will basically take that into consideration for your dope, so you don't even have to zero your knobs. So, for example, not to get in too many bushes here, by the way, there's hours of video and hours of reading on how to do this. So if you're going to use a zero angle program, number one, go through all the instructions first before you launch it and mess it all up. Number two, we don't allow the students at the school here to use it for the first time through because it is that advanced, and all you have to do is mess up one setting and they're in trouble. So these things are good when good information is put in, but when you miss one part or you put bad information in one area, it messes the whole thing up. It's like the one ingredient that screws up the whole recipe, right? So it is that important that if you're going to do it, you have to do it perfectly right. So don't play with this until you're ready for it and you've done your research and you've studied it, right? But for example, let's just say you're going out on a hunting trip. You take a rifle out to the range and you shoot like 7 rounds and you're 2 inches low, 2 inches left at 103 yards. You can go in and use this setup and say, look, I'm exactly 2 inches low, 2 inches left at 103 yards, hit calculate, and it'll take that into consideration for the rest of your dope out to 1,000 yards. You don't even have to re-zero your knobs. If your knobs are zeroed and that's where you're hitting, then it's going to tell you where to dial from there. It actually works really well. I've tried this many times on customers' rifles. So customers, we do a custom build, for example. We'll take the rifle out and zero it and put a couple rounds through it, getting ready to ship off to the customer. And I'll chronograph the rifle. Of course, it's new, so the barrel's going to break in, the speeds are going to change, but I'll chronograph it, and I won't zero the knobs at first. I'll let it way off. So let's just say I cold bore sight it, and I'm 4 inches low and 6 inches left. I'll tell the program where I'm exactly at, and I've run this deal out to 700 yards first round hits. It's that good. And again, it's like taking a little bit more of a fingerprint of your rifle. You have to tell it the angle that you're shooting at, if it's 1 or 2 degrees. It takes a lot more information, and it really fine-tunes your dope a little bit better. So I can see in a hunting trip where it'd be nice that if your zero was off when you got to your destination, an inch low, inch left, you would just tell it. You don't even have to touch your knobs and go and enjoy your hunt. You're not changing your zero, shooting again, and then checking it, changing your zero, shooting. You can just tell it. Where I would use it is once you're really fine-tuned for your zero, let's just say, with mills, we're dialing a third minute or 0.36 inches for every 10th that we dial. And let's just say we're just a little bit high, 0.2 inches. And I could go in and use the zero angle and say that, look, I'm exactly 102 yards. I'm shooting downhill 2 degrees, and I'm 0.2 inches average above center. It will actually fine-tune my dope at distance using that information, which I find to be very useful. For anything you can do to fine-tune that zero, fine-tune your dope, is just going to get you closer and better results, and it's going to require less work from you fudging numbers on the other end to make it right. Now the ugly part. Number one, don't depend on it. Number two, I always recommend that you buy a second phone, or like let's just say you go out and buy a new iPhone. Don't trade yours in. If you have a daughter or a family member that's upgrading from an iPhone, whatever, 5 that can no longer make phone calls for whatever reason, ask them to buy it from them. Put it in an OtterBox. It's waterproof. Download the app on it. Turn on airplane mode, turn Bluetooth off, turn cellular off, turn everything off. And charge it up. It'll still play the app. You can still launch the app and use it, and you can still dial 911, which I find to be amazing, right? But that then becomes your technically your dope phone. Now, don't call it your dope phone. You might get some funny looks, but the reason I say that is you don't want to be pulling your personal cell phone out in the middle of an elk hunt, trying to see it and work with it in the field, in the pouring down rain and snow and mud. I mean, I know you don't mind using them and sacrificing them, but they're $1,000, right? And You don't want to destroy it on a hunt. You don't want to step on it. So your personal cell phone can stay in its case in your pack, and you can have your dope phone readily handle it. And it's not using any battery power. You've got it in airplane mode. You got Bluetooth off. You got cellular off. There's nothing running. You just launch it and throw it out there in the rain. You don't care. It's in a waterproof otter box. You can get it wet, muddy. And if it gets damaged or scratched or somebody, steps back a little bit and almost, you're not going to go into panic mode, or you're not going to be upset that somebody broke your phone, right? So I recommend getting a second phone, but don't depend on them, right? Make sure you have a written copy of your dope once you get it figured out. Make sure you keep it with you. And don't be afraid to practice old school, right? It's so good that you're going to forget and you're just going to depend on it all the time. And we have found here at the school that every once in a while you get somebody can't get it to launch in their program, and that, it's going to happen. It's going to happen on a hunt of a lifetime. It's going to happen when the biggest animal of your life steps out in front of you. It never happened to you once in your entire life. The one time you really need it to be there for you, you're going to go to launch and it's going to ask for a password, and the animal's standing there. So the danger is don't forget how to do it old school, and don't forget that it's still technology. These things, the batteries die. Maybe take one of those little extra batteries with you so you can charge it. But I would say the good, the bad, the ugly. The bad is it's so good that new shooters won't learn to do it old school, and the ugly is they absolutely depend on it, and then it happens. So don't depend on it. I will recommend that you go and read all that you can about the program. I'll recommend that you download and understand all the things that it's asking for. So, for example, you're going to need the barometric pressure. Remember, when you're using barometric pressure and setting up for your dope, it is your reference altitude set to 0 or sea level. That's what the programs are asking for. It's your temperature, it's your height that it's going to say with your reference set to 0. It's your humidity, all these things you can put in there to just fine tune your weather information. These are things it's going to ask for. But again, don't depend on it. I hate to beat this horse to death, but we have seen incidences after incidences over the years where these things have failed, or something didn't turn on, or you just lost it. It fell out of your pack, or you left it late to last location. How many times, and I wish I could say raise your hands, but unfortunately everybody would be raising their hands in their car driving down the road, right? But raise your hand if you were on a hunt or on a match and you left something late at the previous stage or the previous location you were hunting at. You get to the next location, you're like getting your stuff out, and you're like, oh no, I left my phone back there. Now you're praying that you have a way to go back and find exactly where you're at. You can find it. Now, I will tell you this. When I got my first Suunto clinometer, it came with a red rope on it. All Suuntos come with a red rope. So they make compasses and other things for the outdoor industry, right? And at first I thought that was really annoying. Like, it was the most bright red rope you could see. And I was like, oh, why would I put that on something in the outdoor industries? And then after I had to go back and look for it once or twice, I can't tell you how many times I've thanked Suunto for putting a red rope on there that, I'd be like, go back and look and you can see that red rope and you find it and pick it up. So I would put orange tape around it. I would put it in an orange otter box. I would put it in something that you can see visibly, easily, and go and find it when you leave it lay as well. And if it does happen that you lose it, it wasn't your personal cell phone or your business cell phone. It was just a throwaway phone that you bought off your brother for $50 that he was trading it at AT&T to get his new iPhone, and you say, hey, let me buy it. The last thing I want to touch base on when we're working on and trying to get good dope in our rifle, and you'll do the same that we talked about when we're doing manual dope, is you're going to shoot a piece of paper at two distances, and you're going to use those reference points to see how far off you really were from what the program said, and then you're going to use those reference points to fix the program. So at 1,000 yards, it said we needed 9 mils, but we were 2/10 high, so really we only need 8.8. We would go into the program and we would fix it. So when we brought up 1,000 yards in those same conditions, it would say 8.8. And we do the same thing at 600 yards or 500 yards and try to get 2 reference points as far away as you can. You're still going to have to do a little bit of fixing. Don't forget you've got some extra tools like zero angle is a good one, but also you can go in and fudge the program a little bit if you're outside the norm. And like I said, the scope height and speed would be the last I would do in it, but those are in extreme case scenarios where I wouldn't do it right out of the gate. And if the guys from Hornady listen to this, they might go into panic mode that I'm telling people to do this. But if you fall outside that extreme, because they only give you so much latitude to move that point of impact, and I have seen incidences where you didn't have enough. If you fall into those extreme outer edges of that swing or what they allowed in their tools for fixing. The two things I would look to adjust would be, the first thing is to try to use the scope height up and down a little bit after trying zero angle. See if zero angle straightens you out a little bit more and gets you inside the norm so you can adjust it inside the program. But if it doesn't, then I would adjust the scope height up and down a little bit, try to get you closer, and worst case scenario, adjust the speed if you have to. So the last thing I can say about getting good working dope for your rifle is it's not easy. You'll be surprised on how long you'll spending time at the range micromanaging it, even till you get it really tuned up at 500 and 1,000, you'll get it ironed out. But it's not going to happen at your first range trip. It's not going to happen at your first match. And the reason being is your barrel is going to break in and you're going to pick up some velocity. So usually between 150 and 200 rounds, your barrel sort of seasons, and you're going to pick up anywhere from 20 to 100 feet per second. That is really going to mess up your dope. So right out of the gate, if the dope isn't dialing in real great and you're outside the norm a little bit, and don't panic. Just keep shooting and enjoying the rifle. So I'll go out and get good working dope for the rifle that's close. Like I'll try to go out and get it dialed in, get my further shots in, get it to where I'm staying on plates, and go out and enjoy your rifle for a while. Don't seek to have perfect dope on your rifle until you're well past 150, 200 rounds. Go out, shoot some matches, shoot some steel, shoot some woodchucks. Just spend a couple days at the range playing and learning the rifle and getting it settled in and broken in. Then once you get past that 200, get really serious about fine-tuning it then, because now the barrel's broken in. The other thing you have to keep a watch out, these are just like bonus tidbits here, is if you hand load, watch your powder. If you're using different lots of powder, chronograph quite often, so if you change lots of powder, maybe run a couple over a chronograph to make sure nothing's changed. If you notice your dope's off a little bit, you may have to go in and adjust it again. Be careful with powder that is temperature sensitive. We don't shoot any of that here. There's no reason in today to be shooting anything like 4064, which is a great powder, by the way, for 308s, but it is known to be temperature sensitive, which means as the temperatures of the day heat up and cool down, your speeds will increase and slow down, and that's not good. It's sort of counterproductive to what we're trying to do. So I always stay with Hodgkin's extreme ends of the powder, or anything that's extreme temperature stable, right? So think of like H4350, which is known, H4831 shortcut, H1000, any of the extreme versions, and I think other manufacturers are coming out with the same. Try to use temperature stable powder. If you change lots of bullets, anytime you notice that your dope is changing at distance, let's just say you go out and you do some shooting and you reload, right? And all of a sudden you see that you're running a little bit high. Be suspect of anything that you changed lot numbers, right? If you changed bullets, maybe it's a little bit different BC now because they changed their dies, or it's a new die. As bullets are being made, the dies that make them wear out and they start to get to their outer edges of tolerances, and sometimes they can actually go out of tolerance for their diameter. I remember we had 243 bullets here that measured 243.8, which is way big. They should fall into 240 to 8 to 243 to 243.3, somewhere in that area. But when we got some that were way oversized, that can happen and can play with your dope. Don't panic. Just start looking at all your components and try to figure out, okay, well, this is a new lot of bullets. Let's do this again, and maybe we'll have to fine tune for this new lot of bullets. If you don't reload, consider buying your ammunition in big bulk. The guy going out and buying one or two boxes here and there, they do get variations. I mean, you can get brass that's thicker or thinner. You can get brass that's harder. You can get, they do all these things to make consistent ammunition from lot to lot, but they're not exactly the same. You have different lots of bullets. You have different lots of powder. Everything from lot to lot can be quite different. Even stuff inside the same lot can be a little different now and then. So what I recommend, if you do shoot factory ammo and you like to shoot a lot of matches, or you like to shoot a lot, is go out and buy it 2 or 3 cases. I know it sucks because this stuff is super expensive right now, but it will save you from having to constantly chase your dope around, because as you change lots, you have that potential of changing your dope again. And so you go out and buy 3 cases of 6.5 Creedmoor ammunition for the summer. That gives you 600 rounds to enjoy. They're all from the same lot number, and sometimes you have to request this. So if you buy from a major distributor, say, look, hey, I need 3 cases, but please make sure of the same lot. But don't be bashful to ask for that, because it's going to save you a little bit of wear and tear if you find it's off a little bit, right? It's just we're taking all the known issues and we're trying to eliminate them as much as possible so they don't just come up and get us. The last thing I want to talk about with dope here is the old saying of beware the man that owns one gun. I often say that, I love shooting, right? It's my favorite thing to do. It's in my blood. It was just, in my veins is gunpowder and lead, right? I guess I would say it just, pumps through my body. But I don't own a lot of rifles, probably less than what most people think. Not because I can't and wouldn't like to have just giant collection, but I'm a shooter first. I love to shoot, and marksmanship is just what I love that part of it, right? The art and the craft of it. I know that if I have 5 or 6 different rifles that I'm trying to keep running at that really high level of just keeping it doped out and keeping everything running to where I can pick that gun up, run out, and enjoy myself out to 1,000 yards any day of the week and know that I'm going to be able to dial my doping correct. I might not always get the wind right, and I might make errors fundamentally, sure, but my dope is huge, right? So I don't own a lot of guns because trying to keep a lot of guns at that level is really hard to do. It can be done. And here's where logbooks come in super handy, right? You should have a logbook for each and every rifle. If you don't have one, you can stop over to our website, wolfprecision.net. We made one. We have a video tutorial on YouTube. You can see how we use it. But you should have a logbook. I don't care what make and model. You should have one for each of your rifles. But, sounds great in theory to have six hunting rifles, but to keep them all running at that level is just impossible. And so save yourself the time, effort, and just to struggle in the really obnoxious annoyance of going out with different rifles and constantly coming back. Like you're just constantly chasing each rifle, trying to keep them dialed in. It's too much of a high maintenance relationship. So if I can give you any suggestions, right? Have your rifles. If you have one big game rifle, one medium game rifle, whatever they are, varmint rifle, match rifle, trainer rifle, match rifle. They're twins. One's in 223, one's in 6.5 Creed, whatever. But be careful to focus in that these are your guns. This is your rifle. This is your gun, right? Beware the man with one gun isn't because he can't afford to. He just has one and he's really good with it and he knows it like the back of his hand. When he pulls it up to shoot, it feels like his pillow at night. He's that comfortable with it. He recognizes every piece and part of it. He could probably shoot it in the dark with his eyes closed and hit reasonably something in front of him. I mean, it becomes an extension of your body. That doesn't happen easily, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen if you've got 6 different pillows on your bed every night. You're not sure which one you like. This one's comfortable tonight. This one's working. It takes commitment. It takes having one rifle that's your rifle and that you're going to learn inside and out and know it. And you'll be surprised the confidence boost that you will get when you're running that rifle at distance. It changes your shooting. Like I can tell you that I shot like 6 or 7 260s back to back in the same rifle. I just kept changing the barrels out. Same load, everything. And I have to modify my dope a little bit sometimes because of the independent fingerprint of each barrel. This is why I can talk about each rifle having a different fingerprint. Each of these rifle barrels had a different fingerprint and would require a little bit of work to get them up to speed. But it fast-tracked me because the rest of the rifle stayed the same. All my optics stayed the same. I would just change out the barrel, new load, break the rifle in, get my dope dialed in, and off to races I go. Having fun, right? Having fun. And so if I can give you any last piece of advice is pick out your rifle and just learn it and enjoy it and shoot it and get really good with it. It will definitely change your shooting forever. Before we continue on, I do want to say thank you to our last sponsor. We want to thank MDT. MDT is a proud sponsor of the show, makes lots of great chassis. So many now, it's just hard to list them all. Some of my favorites are JAE 700 or the J. Allen, the MDT ACC and ACC Elite, which are both fantastic chassis, the new HNT 26, and the Timber, which we're excited to get in here and try. So one of the things you can do to upgrade your rifle, factory or custom, is to get a good quality stock on it. One way to upgrade your shooting is to get a stock that actually fits you properly. And sometimes that requires going custom. So if you're interested in any type of upgrade to your rifle stock, you can stop over to mdttac.com. That's mdttac.com and look at yours today. All right, so the last thing to touch base on here real quick is, again, focus on one rifle. And the last tidbit here, be slow to change any component of your rifle. I know world-class shooters that have never won a match because they are always changing stuff on their rifle. They're changing their stock, they're changing their bipod, they're changing their rear bag, they're changing their scope, they're changing their rings, they're changing their caliber, They never spend time with one gun well enough to know it that they're comfortable with it. So every time they're shooting something different, they're never 100% confident, they never feel 100% comfortable with it. So once you get your rifle set up, the last advice I can give you is be slow to change any part of it. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there for sale that's shiny and blingy and comes with a great sales pitch. If you're that guy chasing all of this stuff, which is fun, by the way, but on your rifle, be slow to upgrade and move stuff around, because every time you do that, it's changed your rifle a little bit. So now you've got something new that looks different, that feels different. You've got to work with and become acquainted, and then get ready to start running it. So I'm very slow unless something proves that it's better than what I have. Like if I find a stock that fits me better, I might try it for a while to see if I commit to it. But I'm not going to drop my stock like bang, like snapping my fingers and just change to it. I want to work with it for a while to make sure I am doing better with it before I make that and commit to that change. So we're into our new building. We are over 1 week in. We got a 3-phase power up. We posted up some pictures up on Facebook. I do want to thank everybody from Texas for hosting us down there. We really appreciated that. We're getting our machines. They should be here on May 22nd. So we have some new CNCs coming in, lathe and mill. We're really excited. So thank you, Akuma, for all the hard work that you guys have done putting this together. We'd also like to thank everybody out there that's become part of our Wolf Pack. We'll be giving a shout out next week. If you like the podcast and you'd like to support the show, you can stop over to Patreon. It's $3 a month and join our Wolf Pack. We really appreciate it. Like I said, we'll be doing a shout out list next week. So thank you all for doing that. And don't forget our online long range shooting school. It's really starting to take off. This week, we'll be posting up our 40-second instructional video. This is our entire long range shooting school that we're putting up segment by segment online for people to learn and enjoy from the comfort of their own home. The pandemic taught us that a lot of remote learning can be had and a lot of remote learning can be done. And, what we do here, it's awesome to be here in person, but we realize that it's really hard from someone from California, which people have done, to fly the whole way in here. Like we have a gentleman flying in from Texas this week to join us for a reloading class. We really appreciate that. But for those who would like to attend our course and can't get here, we want to offer that option up. So thank you, everybody that's attending the course. We'll be posting up our 40-second video that's going up. I'm really excited about it. We're actually into the wind, and we're talking about that. And then this subject that we're getting into, that the video that will be posted up on Saturdays on group therapy. So if you'd like to join us on our online long-range shooting school, you can learn more at wolfprecision.net. You can go there, register. It'll take you over to Patreon, where we register as a monthly subscription, or you can sign up for the entire year. And then go back to our website, and from the online long-range shooting school page website on Wolf Precision's website, you can click through any highlighted video in a row, in order. You can go back through and rewatch any of the videos at any time. You'll have access to our full archive. So thank you, everybody that's joined us. We really appreciate it. For those who would like to check it out, you can stop over to wolfprecision.net and learn more there. All right, so we're really excited that this was our 150th podcast. This is pretty awesome. We really appreciate it. We've been doing it for a couple of years. We've got some pretty cool interviews lined up. We're really busy setting up the new shop. We're excited to get everything up so we can start sharing some pictures and photos and all the cool things that we're doing here. So the customer can come in and join us at our facility for lots of different reasons, from general gunsmithing and classes to all kinds of really cool stuff that we got working on in the background. We'll be posting more stuff as we keep moving along and getting the facility up and ready for accepting and receiving customers. Our long-range shooting schools for the spring are still being taught in Somerset, and for all the clients coming in through July, we'll be having all of our classes still there, so reservations, all that stuff is still out there. Then August on, we'll be moving to shooting schools to our new location in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which we're excited about. So you can stop over and see more at wolfprecision.net. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us here at the podcast. We really appreciate it. It's really been awesome. If you enjoy the podcast and you'd like to share it, we really appreciate that. If you know somebody that's in the long-range shooting, also don't be afraid to leave a nice comment. That helps us a lot in the ratings as well, too. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you are listening to the Long-Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.